Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. And the Canadiens win streak comes to a close against the New York Rangers. They lose 4-3. Just not their best performance is all I can really say about that. We had a really hot 5 minutes, a really good 5 minutes, and definitely a pretty good push at the end of the game. But as I've been saying this last couple of games, like the Canadiens just have to be better at playing a full 60 minutes, a full 3 periods, and that's just not what we saw today from pretty much everybody. So definitely a little bit frustrating. The first part though, Uri Slavkovsky gets his second of the year, assisted by Caulfield. A nice little 2-on-1. Caulfield, usually the guy who shoots on those kind of situations. Obviously, he's got 5 goals on the season already. So definitely a guy who I think the Rangers are probably expecting him to shoot on that play. So he makes a nice little under the stick pass. I don't really know what the defenseman for New York was doing on that one. He didn't dive, he didn't attack, he didn't really cover Slav or anything. He was just kind of standing there waiting to see what would happen. So the pass went underneath his stick over to Slav, and all he had to do was just tap that one in the net. It was pretty easy. Good to see Slavkovsky get another goal there. The points haven't really been coming for him so far this season, but I think that's his second of the season in terms of points, both goals. So good to see him get on the score sheet, especially early in the game, is a minute and a half in. So that's good to see. And then we followed that up 2 minutes later with a Suzuki goal, a really nice pass from Ivan Demidov on the second power play unit. He gets the puck on the far side and just kind of zips it cross crease. And then Nick Suzuki is able to make a nice one-timer to put that in the net. So we were off to a hot start, 2-0, but that's the worst lead in hockey, as it kind of goes sometimes. Going 2-0, especially early in a game, it's really tough to keep up that momentum. You go up 2-0 early, but then you have the 55 minutes left to play to keep that lead and go with that, and we just weren't able to do that. Zibanejad was able to score on a power play. He had a really nice shot, to his credit. A nice little one-timer from out wide. Kind of looked like Laine on that one. He just ripped that one into the far side corner, so can respect that. It'll happen on the power play. At least we were able to score a power play goal in this one, so you can't blame him too much. But yeah, that was tough. But then the entire second period, it felt like, in the end of the first period, we were just completely on our heels. Just the Rangers were just coming at us in waves, and there was just nothing we were able to do. There were a couple times where the Canadiens were able to get some offensive chances, but nothing too exciting there. It was mostly just fending off the Rangers, and we were able to do so pretty successfully for the entirety of the second period, keeping it 2-1, but. Once the wave finally broke through, it broke through in waves. JT Miller is able to score 34 seconds in, right after their power play that kind of edged over into the third period. They were able to score on kind of a deflection that just went up JT Miller's stick and in, so can't really blame Montembeault for that either. But then after that, 2 goals that Montembeault really should have. I'll give him credit on the Panarin one to make it 4-2. That was just kind of a really nice shot from Panarin posting in, but also that third one from Matthew Robertson, who I literally knew nothing about until today. That shot was just literally no traffic, just straight in on Montembeault. That's just not one you want to see going in. And that's just kind of frustrating, but also it's just, you leave your goaltender out to dry and, make him make a bunch of saves. It's tough to say, that he's the one at fault. We got to be able to play in the offensive zone. We can't just, get a 2-0 lead and then try to protect it for the rest of the game. So that's just kind of frustrating there. But yeah, 2 goals within a minute of each other, or 2 minutes of each other, basically, between Robertson and Panarin. That made it 4-2, and suddenly it was looking like the Canadiens, we need to come back to force overtime for a third consecutive game at the Bell Center, but that did not happen today. Noah Dobson, though, gets his first as a Hab, so that's exciting for us. Another kind of the same one as his assist that he got for a Kirby Dach goal. kind of just threw it at the net, and this time it didn't deflect off of anybody, it went straight in. So that was good to see. Good to see him get on the score sheet on the goals side of things. He's been playing really well for us this year. I think with all the the speculation about apparently he's just the worst defenseman ever now from all the Islanders fans and all that kind of stuff. But it's good to see him get a goal there. It definitely in a big moment too. Like that could have ended up being a catalyst for a comeback. We definitely had some solid chances. Cole Caulfield had a number of chances to tie the game that just didn't quite go in. And, can you really blame him too much? He's been absolutely clutch for us the past couple days in particular. He almost did it again. He had a couple nice ones that just didn't quite find the back of the net. Ivan Demidov had a chance. He kind of carried it in, fell down, and then got back up and made a really nice cross crease pass. I don't know who it was on the other side, but they were definitely not ready for that pass to get there, so they couldn't quite get a shot in on it. But if that had been one time, that would have been in with 100% certainty. So that was a nice chance. I think as the season goes along and guys play with Demidov a little bit more, I think hopefully they'll be a little bit more prepared for those passes to get through, and we'll be ready for that. But that's just the way it is. But yeah, the comeback falls short. We do everything but score in the last couple of minutes. Definitely took over the game in those last few minutes, but couldn't quite find a way to tie the game up. But at the same time, when you look at the game as a whole, you kind of want to not be in that position. You'd want the Rangers to be in that position, especially after you go up 2-0 to start the game. And just, I think, just the name of the game is just, we got to be better 5-on-5 defensively. Just, we're kind of just, especially in this game, just really hot and cold, just not really able to keep them from, getting offensive opportunities and scoring goals. Like that's been the case the past couple of games, like Seattle just kept coming back in that game a couple days ago. The Predators, not too many goals on either side in that game, but, we weren't really able to seal them away either, especially in a situation where we definitely could have. And then this one as well, just we go up early. It's looked like we're going to dominate this game, and then we just can't put the Rangers away. They just definitely, they tilted the ice so heavily for most of that game, just offensive chance after offensive chance. We just have to be able to play more of a back and forth game, if anything, and just not let the Rangers get the amount of chances that they get to score, because you can't ask Montembeault to make every single save, and then when he lets one in, be pissed off at him and say that Dobson should be the starter goalie. So and speaking of which, I understand that especially the Robertson goal, that one just shouldn't go in, but also just you have to also look at the amount of good saves that he did make throughout that stretch, and also just the fact that those chances are happening because the Canadians aren't getting the puck out. They're not making smart breakout plays, and we're allowing the Rangers to go up in numbers, 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s, all that kind of stuff. We need to be able to, play a more responsible defensive game, and right now we're just not doing that. So we just need to be a little bit better in that area of the ice. But yeah, just a frustrating one, but also, every team loses games, right? It's only our second loss of the season. I think that the big frustrating thing right now is just that, most of our wins this year have been kind of skin of our teeth kind of wins. We've had, 2 comeback wins where we won in overtime. We barely beat the Blackhawks in regulation. Who knows what would have happened there in overtime. The Red Wings game is pretty much our only game where we kind of convincingly won. So I think really for me, I'm just looking for a game that we can play that we can really just take it to the other team. And win in convincing fashion, or not even blow them out or anything, but just have a lead and kind of hold that lead and win the game, not have to have too many fluctuations and lead changes and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. That's kind of the sign of a solid team. Good teams are able to take control of games. They don't win every game, obviously they have bad games, but You want to have a situation where we're able to take it to teams, especially teams that we can beat. And I'm not knocking the Rangers at all. I think they really haven't found their footing so far this season, but they're definitely a skilled team with guys like Panarin and Zibanejad, and you know Quick is nothing to scoff at either. So you just like to see we got the Sabres coming up, I believe, on Monday. So that's a game where the Sabres have kind of been interesting. They won 2 in a row, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But the Sabres definitely a team that isn't necessarily as good as the Rangers are, at least on paper. So it'll be interesting to see what we can do against them moving forward. But yeah, I think just in general, you'd like to see the Canadiens get a lead and hold it, and actually just kind of play a full 60 minutes, a full solid game where we're not, letting chances come at us without response, and letting our goalie make a bunch of saves where we're not pressuring the other way. So that's kind of the story of this one. It's just like you go up early, and it's always like it's great, but also this is the part where we just kind of have to wait and see are they going to score on us, or are we going to be able to hold this one out to make it 2-0 or 2-1 or whatever for the final score, because we're able to just play defense for 40 minutes or whatever. But yeah, so I think it's growing pains. The Canadiens are still learning how to be a good team. They're still kind of in the mentality of being the underdogs and stuff like that. But now I think the big difference this year is that the Canadiens are getting everybody's best game of the year. Everybody. I mean, not best game of the year, but like everybody's getting or giving like their best effort. They want to beat the Canadiens. The Canadiens are an up and coming team. We're not getting looked off anymore in the ways that that we might have in previous years, especially going back a couple of years, right? So I think generally for the entire team, it's just a mentality of like we're a solid team in this league. That means we're going to get the attention that we weren't necessarily getting previously. So we need to be able to handle that, and we need to be able to win some games against solid competition. So it's just a way. It's just something that we learn going forward. It's only game 6, right? We got tons of games left in the season. Tons of games left to have some really solid wins. Probably also some not so great losses, but. So far, you look back at the 6 games, all of them have been pretty close. I mean, like the Leafs beat us 5-2, I think, but outside of that, pretty much every game has either been a win or a 1-goal loss, or just a really close game down to the wire. So I think you can respect that. I think it's definitely some solid growth, especially since when you look at how last season was, we were bottom of the league through like the first month of the season. So it's already looking like that won't be the case for the Canadiens going into November this time, but who knows, but it's looking good. We just gotta, there's the ebbs and the flows to the season. I think just things that the team needs to work on, and I think we'll get better there. Another thing I wanted to note there is there's a little bit of chirping going on between Jonathan Quick and Lane Hutson, which was just an unlikely duo to be chirping each other. But he kind of got crushed behind the net there, which will happen. It's all right. And it was a clean hit. But then Jack Eye, being Jack Eye, wants to fight a guy, and they had a good fight, and then Quick is probably chirping him for having a guy protecting him or whatever, but also like, who cares? It's Jack Eye, and Jack Eye wants other teams to know that you can't just hit Lane Hutson and get away with it. So I personally like everything about that. I think it's funny that Jonathan Quick is chirping Lane Hutson, and Lane Hutson being an American-born player was probably pretty excited by the fact that he's got Jonathan Quick chirping him. So I'm sure he watched him growing up. I know I did. With the Kings and their 2 Stanley Cups, so it's probably kind of fun for him. And also, like I love the fact that Jack Eye is standing up for his guys, and I think that we've kind of seen that all throughout like last year, this year, all that kind of stuff. Like our team is really tight, really wanting to stand up for each other and all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool to see the way that our guys are going to be able to take that. We're not going to take shit for any of our guys, like Lane Hudson or Cole or somebody goes down, somebody else is stepping up and throwing some punches on their behalf. So I like to see that, and that's exciting for me. Yeah, but just kind of a funny moment. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of this game. Kind of a frustrating outcome. It's just you'd love to see the Canadiens, especially going up 2-0. You'd love to see them kind of build off of that. Maybe get a goal or two before the Rangers have a chance to score four unanswered. Come back on us. You'd love to see Montembeault make a save on whatever the fuck that guy's name was, Robertson or whatever. You'd love to see that work out, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. I think in terms of our homestand, we got one more at home against the Sabres here, so we can finish off our homestand 3-1, which is still pretty solid considering the fact that I think we were 1-1 or something like that, or I don't remember how many games away we had, but I think we won 2 away. So far it's going really well. It's just like, it's early season. I think just the moral of the story here for this game, and just like the way that we need to be moving forward, is we need to play a 60-minute performance. And I think, Martin St. Louis would probably say the exact same thing to the guys in the locker room. Just, we started really hot. It was a great start. We don't always have great starts, so it was good to see that. But you have to start a game, and you also have to finish a game. We didn't necessarily finish the game the way that we started it, and that's something that we need to fix if we want to win games, especially against the best teams in the league. So we'll see what happens next. We got the Sabres coming up on Monday Monday night, 6:30. So that'll be exciting. The Sabres are kind of been, up and down, but recently they've looked pretty good. They shut out the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers today or this morning. So it'll be interesting to see what version of the Buffalo Sabres we get on Monday night. But we'll have the whole home crowd behind us, so that'll be good to see. So it'll be interesting to see the way that things go. Looking for some big performances out of our top guys still. I loved seeing Slavkovsky and Caulfield combined for a goal there. Like, that's kind of what I've been saying recently, is just like our top line hasn't really gotten that 5-on-5 stuff going yet. Suzuki got his first goal of the season, so that was good too. So an all-around good performance by them. I also loved the way that Veleno played. He didn't really stand out super crazy like he did in the preseason, where I was like blown away by him or anything like that. But I thought he played really well in relief. Obviously, I didn't even talk about this, but Caden Gooley is out for 4 to 6 weeks with what I assume is a groin injury that he's previously been dealing with. I guess it was kind of just like a non-contact thing. And then Line and Doc were both out today. From what I've heard, are just kind of like rest days, but they didn't really say it like that. They made it sound like they were injured. I'm not really sure if it's just like they're resting from their previous injuries, because I didn't really see anything that would indicate that either of them sustained any major injuries in the last game or anything like that. But especially Doc, I would love to see him back. Just like, it's if we lose Doc again for an extended period of time, that would just be so brutal. So I would love to see him back, and obviously Gooley being a top 4 defenseman for us, and just really, I believe, a really underrated defenseman in the league. It's a really tough blow to have him out of the lineup for an extended period of time. It is good, on the other hand, though, that we have Jackeye and Struble, who can both get minutes every night for the next month or so. It's good for both of them. I think both of them are really capable. I think Jackeye has really stepped it up in the last couple weeks, or like in the off season into this season, preseason, all that kind of stuff. It looks like he's really taken the next step in his development. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But yeah, so we're moving on to the Sabres. I like the way that we played for parts of today, but I think what I'm looking for against the Sabres is a full 60-minute performance. But that remains to be seen. So yeah, that's all for me today. I will see you hopefully for a win against the Sabres on Monday.